The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor Villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.
Welcome to this week's Mix 88.5 Property Update on PMTV, with my guest as always, Tim Gladwin, and sponsored by the Tudor Group.
The Mix 88.5 Property Update.
So welcome to this week's edition of the Property Update here at Mix 88.5. Our guest, as always, in the studio, Tim Gladwin. If you want to get hold of Tim, the usual contact details, patty@salmansthailand.com is the email address, www.salmansthailand.com is the web, and of course the office number 038 252 588. Any property questions or inquiries can go there. Tim, as always, good afternoon, nice to see you.
Yes, likewise, Russell.
Afternoon. I'll do that again, shall I? And take two. Hello, Tim. How are you then?
Yeah, very well, very well. Business continues to tick along quite nicely.
Good.
I think it's probably fair to say that the flood of people arriving from Bangkok. Actually, I didn't mean any pun there, but you know, the huge amount of people that have been arriving from Bangkok, the flow seems to have slowed. That's not to say any or many have seemingly returned to Bangkok, obviously, which means that Pattaya is still exceptionally busy.
Yeah.
But we're not having the same numbers of people by any means coming in seeking accommodation for the next month or two. Obviously, that was happening to an incredible extent for the previous 2 or 3 weeks. So, you know, it seems that certainly for now at least, people have stopped moving down here. That said, I was talking to someone from Bangkok last night who's down here, actually moved down with a large proportion of the corporation that he works for, the large corporation. They're based in a hotel, and some of the meeting rooms in the hotel down here in Pattaya have now been basically co-opted by them as temporary office space.
That's huge. Good way of doing it, just to get business back on track.
And apparently there's lots of the big corporations from Bangkok are doing exactly that. They've got the hotel rooms booked up in great numbers, and the staff going to work every day down in the meeting rooms downstairs, and doing the best they can, because it's just impractical to run things out of Bangkok, or out of much of Bangkok right now.
Yeah.
And what he was saying was that, you know, we've not actually seen the worst of it as yet, according to him.
Yeah.
You know, there's an awful lot of water, a massive amount of water still up country that's not been allowed to flow down as yet, and it's going to have to be allowed to flow down in the not too distant future. He was saying that this means another surge is likely in the next few days, if not the next week or so, and the problems will come again because there are more high tides predicted, and so far from being the end of the problems, you know, it could just be a sort of temporary hiatus in that things seem to have got better. I mean, on the ground here, I think things are better because a lot of the distributors, retailers, they've worked the systems out, and they've got new depots from which they're now distributing stuff. So hopefully those kind of problems down here won't get worse again. But I think that the problems facing Bangkok and some of the areas north of Bangkok, there is the potential, apparently, for them to get worse again.
Yeah, I did actually make a trip into Bangkok last week. I had to go there. Some of it's like reminiscent of scenes out of movies that, you know, you wake up in a dream state of, what was it, 2012 or 28 days later, that sort of stuff, and it's very desolate, and you've got cars sort of, I know they're not abandoned, but they look abandoned along the sides of the roads and the highways, buses, coaches, cars, everywhere. And then other parts of Bangkok are sort of business as normal, absolutely jammed, and you can't really go down because there's only that little way to go. One of the things that I did notice that cars in town were actually doing rather well, and have adapted a lot of their cars and the trucks with a sort of snorkel for the exhaust pipe.
Was that right? Yeah. I've seen that before. I think you can actually get kits whereby that you attach to the exhaust, so obviously the water doesn't then enter your engine up the exhaust, and you know, if you're going to go through deep water in cars, you're supposed to have one of these attachments on.
Well, I think there's only two ways of doing it, the ins and the outs. So you've either got the air intake that's going to stop you from your engine from running if it gets flooded with water, or if the air can't go out of the exhaust, then that will also stop the engine. So at least good stuff they're trying, and going to get. I hope they do remember to take them off afterwards, because they're not the safest things around, are they?
No, one would imagine not, given the fumes that are actually coming out of there.
and the heat that you might encounter as well and other bits. But I can't harp on about things because I did get a comment last week that we were very Alf Garnett when we were complaining that the water and amenities were not available in town for us to purchase on a readily basis. So I'm not allowed to be Alf Garnett today, and hopefully the Alf Garnett listener that commented has actually got out of bed today, because I know he was drunk last night.
Right. No, and things, there's no doubt that things have improved. I mean, my sort of point of reference tends to be the big 7-Eleven next door to our office, and we can generally get water in there now, not all the time, but they do seem to get deliveries of water each day, perhaps not as much as they would like, because it's normally run out before the next delivery comes. But nevertheless, as long as it's coming in every day, that it's not a big issue.
Yeah.
Again, I think bread is generally quite easy to get hold of now. It wasn't at one stage. Rice doesn't seem to be a problem. So I think, things are certainly improving. From a personal point of view, there are certain luxury items, not quite such normal items, that perhaps there's not quite the same effort being made to get the supplies of them back, because obviously you focus on the essentials first. So it's not business quite as usual, but I don't think that anyone is going short of the essentials.
No, you can seem to get it these days, rather limited supply, but it's there. So that's our Alf Garnett moment over and done with. We talked about things over the last couple of weeks after the floods had hit everywhere else, but not here, as to this area being quite good and possibly out the way. And then we also got on to how is Bangkok going to be in the future, and your comment about NASA saying that, oh, well, actually, it might be bad news for Bangkok.
Yeah, and, obviously this is something that I've been focusing on quite a bit recently, here in articles I write, because I find the potential fascinating and potentially, very much a big time for Pattaya, because the reality is that if Bangkok is going to struggle, then obviously you're looking at other places as business centres, and the most obvious conclusion that most people would draw would be that the business centre would be somewhere close to here. Maybe not in the centre of Pattaya, because it's simply not ready for it, but if you're going to plan a new town, it would probably be near here to take advantage of Lam Shabang, Thailand's major port. The fact that the international airport is this side of Bangkok, that the motorways between here and Bangkok are exceptionally good, that Bangkok and the airport are not very far away.
Yeah.
The fact that the infrastructure here is already pretty good and getting better all the time. So I think if you were planning for the future and saying, well, Bangkok's basically doomed, and we need to start planning now with what we're going to do, Pattaya is, and the eastern seaboard generally, is sitting pretty. Obviously a dry place, and a place with lots of space for extra development. And you would have to say it would be surprising if a different part of the country were chosen, because you'd be crazy to move away from the major port. You'd be crazy to move away too far from the airport. These are very important considerations. Logistics and distribution in this day and age are of vital importance, and as they were historically. You look at how most major capital cities were formed over the years. It's on a good river or on a port area, so that trade could take place. And while the nature of the trade may have changed, the same considerations basically apply in this day and age as well. So I was rather amazed actually this morning when I read a headline that read that Pheu Thai, the governing party of Thailand right now, have tabled a motion in Parliament whereby they should look into this very question of whether Thailand's capital city should be moved. I mean, I literally just read it this morning, and I was, like I say, I was shocked, because it seems like, this is an issue that people are taking very seriously. It was an article from The Nation, and the MPs in question were saying this very thing. Bangkok's sinking. They say 50 years. In 50 years, it's all going to be underwater.
Yeah.
We need to do something now. Maybe we should be looking now to move the capital city to somewhere new. And they mention two areas. They said maybe in Isan, in the northeast, which I would see as unlikely.
I don't mean to laugh at that mention of Isan being the capital of Thailand.
Yeah.
Yes,
it would be hard to imagine. There's just, you just don't have big airports there. You don't obviously have any major trading hubs there. You know, you would want to be near the coast, near the big ports. The other option that they did mention was eastern Thailand, i.e. the eastern seaboard. And if you're going to do that, one would anticipate that it would be somewhere between Pattaya, maybe Chonburi, maybe make the whole area between Pattaya and Chonburi, which if you ever drive down Sukhumvit Road now, between the two, it's basically all built up.
Yeah.
You know, there's development the whole way. Maybe what you do is you take that whole area and you build back, because there's lots of space out there, and by doing so, you're encompassing a big proportion of the industrial estates that are down here. You're encompassing Lam Shabang, Thailand's major port. You know, that would be common sense would dictate that would be the most likely option, to sort of say, right, at the far end it will be Pattaya, and at the other end it will be Chonburi, and we'll develop that overall area into a huge conurbation.
And the people in the middle who have been sat there for many years suddenly are worth fortunes, or if you can get out there and start investing in that sort of area. I know there was a place out by the Burapar golf course. There was a lot of land up for sale there a year or so ago. I wonder if that's got to be one of those great areas to invest in now.
Well, you know, you have to say that if this is going to happen, and of course it's easy to say, oh, it'll never happen. But what is inevitably, or seemingly inevitably going to happen, is that there's going to be a major issue with Bangkok, the fact that it's sinking, and the fact that sea levels are rising, that global climate change is causing heavier rains every year, so that this flooding problem without the rising sea levels is likely to cause problems for Bangkok on an ongoing basis, year in, year out. So there's no doubt about it that a major issue exists. I was reading another article. I actually mentioned this in my e-newsletter last month.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of responses, all of which were agreeing with the analysis that I made. A friend of mine who actually lives in Bali, he sent me a link to a news report that linked to another news report from the French press agency. I think it's APF or whatever it's called. And there are people writing in great detail about this very issue. And apparently Bangkok is listed by the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. I take it some sort of quango. They list Bangkok as one of the 10 most endangered cities in the world. So, you know, it's taken the flooding for a lot of us to become aware of this problem. Yeah. But clearly this is a major problem that has existed long before.
I do remember many years ago, as we've said in past episodes, I do remember that it was always said as the Venice of the East because of all the canals and how it was many years ago. So I don't want to say flooding has been a good thing, but if you want to try and find a good bit out of it, maybe this is one of the good things, that yes, the floods came down, yes, it was bad for everybody, but we've actually now started to realise that something should be looked into and plans made before it does disappear.
That's right. You know, people are actually acknowledging that there is a problem, and that it's something that needs to be dealt with one way or another. And obviously the fact that the government has already tabled a motion in Parliament means that people are taking it seriously, and they are actually apparently dealing with it. Now, I go myself. I've heard on many occasions in passing comment that Bangkok's sinking, but you don't really tend to think anything more of it. It's sinking, you know, nice, fascinating fact, but you don't necessarily go off and research what that actually means for the future. But obviously, now that the floods have hit Bangkok, even though they're from an unrelated cause, like I say, it's opened people's eyes to the reality and made them think about, well, what's going to happen? Because right now we're sat in a situation where we're underwater and it doesn't work. You know, we can't live this way. And if this is what's going to happen in the future, and it's going to only get worse, then clearly we do need to address it. And the relevance for this show is that, like I say, I think any sensible analysis, any right-thinking person is going to say, in a capital city, you don't want to move too far from where you currently are, because it just doesn't make sense. You know, it would be crazy. You need places with good road connections, a trading port, a deep sea port, a place where there's already a lot of business, where there's already a lot of infrastructure. Obviously, you're going to have to develop outside of that, because, as we've seen in recent weeks, Pattaya is just not set up for even the numbers of people that have come down during the flooding.
Yeah.
You know, as a capital city, Pattaya doesn't work. And it's clearly not going to be a case that's simply going to say, right, Pattaya is the new Bangkok. Obviously not. But I think this area, the eastern seaboard generally, is ideally situated for it because of its proximity, because of what's already here, and because of the fact that there is so much room along this corridor, which is already developed at the sea level, with a lot of those things that you need in your capital city, and there's all this space behind that is there to be developed.
And I think if they wanted to, okay, Suvarnabhumi is okay at the moment as a major airport. That hasn't really been affected, although it was built on some dodgy swampland nearby or right underneath it. Utapao is still there as an airport. It can be obviously made bigger and more international, but at least it's a start.
Yeah, well, Utapao is actually, I think it's the longest runway anywhere in Asia, built for B-52s that had their flaps shot out during the Vietnam War, which so they could basically land without the benefit of the braking from the flaps and still be okay, not run out of runway. So it's an enormous runway, it's an enormous area, and absolutely, I mean, long before the flooding crisis, there's been talk of it being developed into Patia's own airport. The flaw in that logic historically has been the fact, well, historically, since Suvarnabhumi was opened, is the fact that Suvarnabhumi is so easily reached. It might take you 35 to 40 minutes to get to Utapao from Pattaya. It only takes you an hour to get to Suvarnabhumi. So
yeah,
there's not a great benefit to be had by having the Pattaya airport.
But I'd imagine if they do develop the whole area, there would be a road made a lot easier and better to get straight into Utapao.
Well, I suspect that's right. And the truth is that right now there may be an issue also with Suvarnabhumi. I mean, apparently this was something else I've been told the other day. It was built on a floodplain itself, on a major, and that's why they had the very well publicised runway issues when it first opened, because they'd built it on this floodplain. They hadn't taken full account of just how much give there would be in the swampy land underneath the runway, and it started cracking, as we all know. And obviously, it was a bit of a scandal at the time.
Yep.
But it's not necessarily placed in the best position. But obviously, in the future, if that does become a greater issue, like you say, that there is Utapao there that could quite quickly, one would think, be redeveloped into a much bigger facility.
And I think there's quite a lot of sort of urban areas around there as well. So Mix 88.5, it's our property update on a Wednesday afternoon, all sponsored and brought to you by Tudor Court and Tudor Group in the final developments of the Tudor Group and Tudor Court condominiums at the moment on Pratham Nack Soi 2. If you want to go down there and see them, Simon says get down and see it before it's all covered up and you don't see all the nice extra bits of the damp-proof course and the double-skin walls and all those benefits you get there.
You're watching the Mix 88.5 property update here on PMTV. We'll be back in just a sec.
The Mix 88.5 property update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor Villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards. The Mix 88.5 property update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor Villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.
Now, we talked a little bit about it last week and we talk about it again this week. If, let's say that this is the area that it is going to be for people to move away from Bangkok, move down to here to put their office, their factory, their workplace, or even make it into the capital city. Is there space for everything? I see along Sukhumvit Road there is now the King Power duty free, there's Amway, there's some other big developments going up. Next to Foodland there's I'm guessing it's sort of a factory type place that's going up there now. Is there enough room to put loads more of those, or are we going to have to move further out up the hill?
Yeah, in Pattaya itself, there simply isn't the room. The roads have not been designed for it to be a city bigger than it is. It's a city that grew up rather than one that was planned. If you go to a lot of the Western countries, the younger Western countries, the newer towns have been planned very, very well. So the central business district has nice big roads. They tend to be very uniform in how they're laid out. And, town planning has played a big role. Obviously, Pattaya didn't grow up in that way. It sort of grew out as it became increasingly popular. If you're going to do a new city, or if you're going to increase the capacity of this area generally, the eastern seaboard, then to an extent you will need to, I think you would need to build a new central business district. You've got the downtown here is the tourist area, you know, where people go out for entertainment, restaurants, whatever. You would have to build a CBD, and one would anticipate you'd probably build that maybe not too far from Lamshabang, maybe back a little bit. The port, again, like I say, it's a very important consideration. Somewhere near good road connections. You couldn't put it in the centre of Pattaya, but you know, if we're going to go along this road before such time as any big decision is made, in the short term, I think that there are changes ahead for Pattaya anyway. Certainly, we've had a couple of calls from big corporations during the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think, and they have asked us for very significant office space, huge, you know, 3,000-4,000 square meters of office space that they want to rent long term. And that was what surprised me. We're not talking about short term. We're coming out of Bangkok. They're talking about long term rental, and so presumably with the idea to move people down here permanently or semi-permanently. The problem is, of course, Pattaya doesn't have any commercial property, or what I would term commercial property.
Yeah, there's no office blocks anywhere.
No, there aren't. There absolutely aren't. You know, this is a town that's grown up predominantly on the back of small businesses, and small businesses, pretty much irrelevant of what they are, have typically been operated out of shop houses. In some cases, a number of shop houses put together and knocked through. But the vast majority of businesses down here run out of shop houses. And obviously, shop houses, while they're ideal for small businesses, they don't suit bigger businesses and particularly huge corporations at all.
Yeah.
Now, with the way Pattaya's gone, I think it's been a topic of conversation for a few years amongst a lot of people in property as to when the first person is going to come in and actually build an office block here, build a commercial property building. And one would anticipate that when they do, it would go quite well, because you have all these industrial estates, I think 38, that are within perhaps 45 or 50 kilometres of Pattaya. Huge corporations in those industrial estates, massive factories from all over the world. But
if your company doesn't really need manufacturing, doesn't need a warehouse, then it doesn't really need to be there. It can be somewhere else.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I think that right now, a lot of the admin staff are in office blocks, office facilities within the factory. But obviously, like you say, typically around the world, the office would be in the city, close to the, not too far anyway from the factory. But that's not happened in Pattaya as yet, and one would anticipate there is scope for that happening. And like I say, there's been a lot of discussion as who's going to go and do this, and will it work? Because there's also a lot of a lot of companies here that do operate from shop houses by way of, because of necessity. That's their only option. But if there was a good commercial building here, they would probably take a suite in there rather than.
I'm sure a lot
shop house
would, if it was sort of right price. I'm sure a lot of businesses would move out, because when you get into like the shop house places, they're not really worked out and they're not really built for an office. Although it can be done and you can make it into an office, it's not really what you want.
It's not ideal. I mean, a good example is a single shop house. You might have probably 4 metre wide by, I don't know, 12 metres deep, at which, and there'll be a bathroom at some stage, probably under the stairs, and at the back there's not a lot, it's not very wide, so there's not a lot of space that's usable. And so obviously you can't actually house too many people on any given floor.
Yeah.
And if you've got 3 or 4 floors, obviously you've got a situation where there's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 people maybe on each floor, and a lot of space tends to go to waste, because obviously there's a lot of businesses where all they have is a couple of people downstairs on the ground floor, and the floors above are simply empty and unused.
Or even if the floors are used, you've still got to have a lot of wasted space, because people have got to travel between the floors, and it's usually going up this staircase that is not a nice little staircase. It runs along the entire length of the building and sort of ruins everything.
Yeah, like I say, people use them, I think, to a large extent because it's the only option that they have. Were they to have the option of a nice office suite in a nice commercial development, then I'm sure there's a lot of businesses would take that opportunity. Like you say, given the price being right and the location being decent, but it's just not here yet. I think it will come. I think it will inevitably come. But we've been saying that for a long time, and I've spoken to a few developers who have been proposing it. and have never quite got round to it. And I'm not sure whether that's been a question of finding the right plot of land or not finding the financing or whatever, but for whatever reason it's not happened. Obviously right now, you know,
You've got to be brave to do that as well, though, I think.
well, you do,
If it was your company and you had a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand workers that you wanted to move down and you built your own purpose office block, okay, I can see that one. But if you're a developer, let's say it's let's Matrix Get In there, or any of the others, this lot from that we see in the newspapers there, would they then just say, right, I'm not going to build condos, I'm going to build an office block and hope people will come and use it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk. You can do market research, but the reality is, as we all know, that if you build the right kind of condo here at this moment in time, it's going to be a very profitable enterprise for you. So you get a prime piece of land in a good location. If you use it, if you build a condo on there, and you do it right, and you price it right, and you get your marketing right, the odds are that you're going to make an awful lot of money. So the question is, why would you do anything else? You know, you have to be given a reason. And while you're making money building condos on those sites, it would be a lot riskier to build an office block. Besides, when you build an office block, it tends to be for a different reason, because if you build a big office block, it's very unusual that you would actually then sell subdivisions within the office block.
Yeah.
You would rent them out. So you'd be expending an awful lot of money. Therefore, you need a very significant investment up front, and you wouldn't get that back through sales. You would get that over an extended period of time through an income. And so it's a fundamentally different type of investment, and requires a fundamentally different type of developer.
But I know a lot of the buildings in Bangkok, if someone has done an office type of building they've put up, they do actually use a big chunk of it themselves. Is there any companies in town that are big enough to say, yes, we can build an office block and we can house all of our staff in there as well, because we're going to take up a chunk of it, and then the rest of it is going to be out for rent?
Right now, I don't think there is.
Yeah.
You know, like I said a minute ago, I think Pattaya has grown up to a large extent on the back of small enterprises. However, the recent developments and the inquiries that we've had from very large corporations, who obviously I can't really mention, but the suggestion is, if those companies, those corporations are serious, obviously their inquiries will reveal exactly what we've told them. You know, we'd love to find you somewhere, but it simply doesn't exist down here. And they maintain the intention to come down here. They will at some stage conclude that to do so, they're going to have to build their own office block. Now, if they're going to do that, one would anticipate that there will be an optimum size of office block, whereby the cost to build per square metre is at its cheapest, and that will unlikely to be the size that fits them exactly. So you build something higher without going to that height where it gets very, very expensive to build, and you take up the space that you need and you rent the rest out. And like you say, that's, I think that commercial development over the years has often had a driver in it, because someone's looking to house their own corporation.
And then you're going to get sort of, for coining a phrase, sort of a boutique office rather than a big tall office block. You're going to get a 6 or 7 stories, and that's my little boutique office block now, where I can take up a couple of floors and the rest are for rent.
Yeah, well, like I said, you would anticipate that this is something that's going to come to Pattaya. And like this is not just because of the flooding. It's been something we've been discussing for some time. It's inevitably going to come. I'm not sure when and I'm not sure where, but I think it will inevitably come. However, the other thing, of course, is if at some stage there is this decision made to start moving out of Bangkok to a new, if not a capital city, then a business centre that is not subject to the vagaries of the weather and flooding, then one would anticipate that something would likely to be purpose-built, whether that's a big business park or, you know, a new CBD that would join what are currently different cities into some sort of large conurbation.
Yeah.
You know, that would be, I think, the likeliest way for it to go if they do indeed end up making that decision, rather than trying to hang on in Bangkok and see what they can do to hold back the tide. As we know, King Canute was not very successful, and I don't anticipate anyone else would be. But
okay, well, I'm sure we'll be touching on this subject again over the next couple of weeks, and if you've got something to put to it and want to put in an extra bit, then let us know. Possibly you have a better idea of what's going on in that particular subject matter as well. Now, some of the good things that have happened, I do see that if you've got a a Honda, and it's been damaged by the floods. Honda have said in 6 provinces that they're going to fix your car for free, which is very nice. Seems as if Honda have actually taken a real hiding over the last couple of months.
They have.
The floods, the earthquake, the tsunami, and all sorts. So that's really nice of them, and I'm hoping that some of the other manufacturers will jump on board with that and say, well, look, we know there's nothing you could have really done about it, and let's try and help out where we can and fix your car for free if it's got flood damage.
Yeah, in many ways it's the Japanese way. There was a report just before we started on the Business Daily about how Japan tries to give everyone jobs, even if it means they're not doing anything. I think it tends to be the Japanese way. It's not just all about profit.
Okay, let's have a look at the profits these days. Our finance look this week sees the pound going down a little bit, 48.5. It was 49.3 last week, and it's gone down the same as the euro has at 41.4 from 42.4 last week. So is the British pound being dragged down because of euro problems?
Potentially, but then again, also the Aussie dollar has weakened against the baht. Not a lot of move on the US dollar, but maybe for some unknown reason, in spite of the floods, maybe the baht is getting a bit stronger. Maybe it was a case that, obviously, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, foreign currencies have been getting a bit stronger as against the baht, and maybe this is just a little bit of a rebound.
Okay. Well, if you're buying your 1 million baht condo this week, it's going to cost you $32,420. It'll cost you 20 grand in sterling, £20,551, and in euros, which, some people still use for some reason, 24,078. And if you want to buy in drachma, it's about 5 million trillion billion. If there's any drachma around. Okay, let's have a look at our property of the week then. So this is something new and nice.
Yeah, it's a new development that's about to be launched on a beautiful and very large, I think, 33 rai site in Nar Jomtien, right on the beach, on a beautiful beach at that. The topography of the site is very good in that it's a nice steady slope coming up from the beach, which allows the developer to build into the side of the hill effectively. So you've got low-rise units at the front, and obviously what the hill allows is that you build a low-rise unit, then you build another low-rise unit above it, but because of the topography,
everyone gets to see the sea.
The initial,
a bit like Phuket.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very popular style of design in Phuket, and the hill's not quite as high here, but the steady slope allows them to do that, and obviously the units then behind obviously get the clear view. The communal area is exceptionally nice. There are indoor golf simulators, outdoor chipping and putting areas for golf, lots of swimming pools, and very green, beautiful areas. Also, shops that will be supported financially so they're able to survive, that will offer things like personalised shopping. So, for example, if you've got a place in there coming down for the weekend, you can phone ahead and have the shop deliver the stuff to your unit. Yeah. So your eggs and your milk and your bread and whatever else is there waiting for you when you arrive, which strikes me as a very good idea.
It's a lazy man's condo, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you go down for the weekend, what better? I mean, the last thing you want to do when you get there is go out and do your shopping for the weekend. So, I really like that idea.
Or if you've gone away and you're abroad, you can send an email back and say, by the way, when I arrive back on this date, please make sure that this is stuck in my fridge.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, with the interior designs, built into the price is an allowance whereby you can choose from 3 top interior design companies and have a massive choice of colours and schemes and different products to decorate your place. But obviously that means that while you're choosing it, if you buy a place, you're not going to have fit-outs going on for years to come. The fit-out is included, it's just that you get your choice of who you use and what you use to furnish it. So a very novel idea again, and something that really strikes me as a very good idea. Prices range from around 60,000 baht up to 120,000 baht. Bear in mind the location, the layout, the quality. Very, very attractive prices, and I think it's a project that will do very, very well indeed.
Okay, that sounds nice. Zenith on Nar Jomtien. Okay, it's a good little place down towards Bang Sarai. That's about it for another week. We'll see you same time, same place next week for another edition of the Property Update. As always, Tim, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you, Ray.
And I'm sure some of the things we've talked about this week will continue next week and maybe in a few weeks to come.
You've been watching the Mix 88.5 Property Update on PMTV, brought to you by the Tudor Group. and we'll see you at the same time, same place next week.
The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.